Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Experts Insight session with the one and only OG. Somebody called me an OG the other day, Lisa. Somebody was like, Matt Comber's an OG. And I was like, don't.
Okay.
I felt quite old. But I think we're OGs now. So I'm going to call you an OG.
Okay,
Barclay Jones is the OG. It's the OG, right? I think. Been there, done it, won the t-shirt, helped hundreds, thousands of businesses in this industry over the years.
I think that's it sounds like I'm a floozy, but I'm up for that.
Yeah, let's go with it. Let's roll with that one. And we are going to talk. So as everyone knows from these expert insight sessions, I get asked questions during Midweek Madness that I would talk all day about if I could, but I can't because people get bored. So we do these as additional sessions. Lisa, you and I were talking just before we started rolling here and said that around probably 25, 30% of the questions that I get asked on Midweek Madness are around data and how what people can do with data. There's no one better to talk about data than you guys. And I'll let you kind of explain what you do in just a second. So that's what we're going to talk about. We are both data addicts, I think it's fair to say, and we all want recruiters to do better. And I think when you put those two things together, I think they work together well. Before I jump into starting asking some questions, explain to everyone a little bit more about Barclay Jones. If they've been living under a rock and they've no idea what you do, especially in the bullhorn world, where have they been? Talk a bit more about what you guys do over there and how you're helping recruiters.
So predominantly we work with bullhorn clients. And why is that? Because for a number of years, myself and the Barclay worked with lots of different bits of technology, and we got to know lots of different bits of technology because we're geeky and we love process, and we get out of bed in the morning to help recruiters make more deals quicker and build more sustainable businesses. But as time went on, Bullhorn kept buying all of the stuff that we were learning about. And then one day in around 2019, we just said, look, I'm going to stick a pin in it. We're going to stay with Bullhorn. And I'm not unhappy with the decision that I made. It's a great bit of tech. And then obviously all the stuff that bolts onto it as well, and how it can add even more turbo to a very busy workflow. I kind of get out of bed in the morning for that, really. So we do bullhorn training, we do recruitment training, we have bullhorn visions and sprints where we help clients realize more ROI from their bullhorn estate. And we are really hot on automation as well. We do think that automation for a lot of our clients, coupled with analytics, is a missing link. Hope that explains.
Eloquently and beautifully, it explains perfectly. So I've got some questions for you, but as everyone who will have watched these and continues to watch them knows, I just go for it, right? We'll end up somewhere by the end of this. I'm sure this is probably, I was thinking, I put myself in like a customer's shoe and I was like, where would you start? So if you've got a customer that's going to speak to you now, right? Or if you're a recruiter that's watching this and they think, hey, I know I need to get better and I know there's performance here to be had that we're not doing anything with. Where do you start? So if you're somebody new in this, or it's a new journey that you're about to go down, where would somebody start? Maybe what kind of things should they avoid? I'll probably remind you of the avoid bit because I can't remember two parts of a question anymore. I'm too old. But where would you start with that if somebody's new to this?
So new to data in terms of starting out and using their data to make more money?
Yes. Yeah. So because you guys, what I love about you guys, you talk a lot about ROI, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm an ROI kind of person. Absolutely. So if you think, hey, we've got a lot of data, I want to make better return on my investments across Bullhorn, across data. What are the things that maybe I should be doing first? What does that journey look like?
Okay, so something that I think is really important for all of this is ROI is actually a very overused term, and that's not me playing with what you've just said. I recently worked with someone who really got off on ROE. It's a shame it's not D for data, but ROE, return on effort. Okay. Ooh. There's a lot of data out there. There is too much data out there. And coupled with your average recruitment consultant really struggling with the disease called FOMO, fear of missing out, that a lot of job boards and LinkedIn really capitalize on that weakness that these recruiters have. And they capitalize on it by making their platforms really easy to use, even though their platforms are full of very, very dirty data sets, like incredibly dirty data sets, like full of candidates that aspire to be, as opposed to who are. So coupled with huge amounts of data, more data than we really actually need. Coupled that with FOMO and obviously all these tech giants really, squeezing into your brain and going, you need more and you need to pay for more. The best place to start, is I always think, is look at your market. So if I was a one-person business and I was in gaming, or I was in accountancy, and I was in accountancy in Yorkshire or in Birmingham, I'd quickly find out how many players, not to the nearest 5, but how many players, maybe to the nearest 10 or 20 or 50 or 100, actually exist within my market. And if I don't know the answer to that, there's places I can go. For example, depending on where you are in the world, but there are often trade bodies and places that actually, if you rang them and said, talk to me about the size of the market, talk to me about how many members you've got, things like that. Start with understanding how big a data set you actually need to begin with, and then get it, work it. Now, evidently, we always say to our clients in the bullhorn world, bullhorn first, all right? Bullhorn first, not bullhorn on a Friday because you've got to send an invoice, not bullhorn, oh, damn, I need to send out an interview confirmation. But when you're sourcing, when you're advertising, when you're doing your BD, you start with bullhorn first. And 9 times out of 10, or actually the market is actually 72 times out of 100 or 80 out of 100 of the times that you need to do anything, you will already have what you already need. It's just that we do struggle with this fear of missing out. So what we do is we overcompensate from a perceived lack of data, and then we go hunting and we go searching and we find even more pants data. The typical recruitment life cycle that I've seen over the years is I've got a job and I need to source for it. So what do? Bullhorn, what a mess, what a data nightmare. Oh, right, I can't find anything. What I'll do is I'll go outside and find some more. And I'll spend ages doing that, on average about 13 hours a week per average recruiter. Some do some more, some do less. And then I put more data onto my system if I get a minute. But because I've got not much time, I don't code it, I don't clean it. And so I just dump more in. So the next time I need to go and source, I repeat that cycle all over again. So the quick answer, little time, quickly get this over and done with, Lisa, is start with bullhorn, but ultimately really ask yourself, how much data do you really need? Met a client last week that got 9 recruiters in the UK, something like 50,000 candidates on their system. So I said, let's get our calculators out and figure out how many per person that is that you think you need to nurture. And as much as my calculator brain isn't switched on today, the answer to flipping many is the answer that would come out of your calculator if you put it in right now. So start with bullhorn and start with the data set that you actually can physically work. And then what you do is you plug in automation to give you that volume approach to nurturing that data, elevate you above the murky, dirty, oil slick ridden stuff within your system, and allow automation to wake it up when you need it. I hope that's a decent enough answer for you there, Matt.
Yeah, it's perfect. I wrote loads. So firstly, we're going to start a punk rock band called the Dirty Data Sets. It's going to be a recruitment punk rock band. And I loved return on effort. I did one of these with Liran from Woo, and we were talking about candidate experience. And by the end of it, we'd stopped calling it candidate experience, called it personal relationships. And
Totally.
I love that. And I was like, like if you think of, if we stop using the word candidate experience, which is horrendous, and like I am guilty of that, and we call it personal relationships. How can we use data to better build personal relationships? Sounds so much better than use that to build candidate experience. But I love that return on effort. I love that.
But I take it one step further, because as much as, and I think one of the reasons why candidate experience gets such a bad rap is it feels a bit fluffy. Look at my face. I don't get me wrong. I'm really into relationships. I'm a human. My DISC profile tells me that I'm an extrovert. God forbid everyone that it comes into contact with. But relationships are very important to me, and certainly post-COVID, where I'm in less places, but I'm more visible because I'm online more. It's, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Yeah. So every touch point, every opportunity you've got to build those relationships, it's not about how many times you can hit the phone. It's about how many of the right people you can speak to about the right stuff at the right time. So candidate experience for me, it's a bit, and it's a very almost like mid-2000s reference. It feels a little bit old fashioned. Absolutely relationships. But I'd also think, right, okay, ultimately, it's about monetizing those relationships. And I know that might sound a little bit harsh, but that's the ultimate WIFM, isn't it? What's in it for me? Why should I do what Lisa and Matt are suggesting? Well, because you're going to make more money. And I hope that you're in recruitment to earn a living. In the very least, you might not be here to be the next billionaire, but you might want to pay off your mortgage, or you might want to have a really cool holiday or a gorgeous car. Well, you can't do that if you're ringing the wrong people at the wrong time about the wrong stuff. You can't do that if you don't have relationships with people. So for me, it's about monetizing those relationships. But I'd also change that experience word to expectation. You know, I go onto the average recruitment consultant's website and it says that they are niche specialists in a certain area, and that they've got their community in the palm of their hands. They might not use that language, but that's what they're trying to say. But the experience and the expectations, therefore, of the candidates and clients, because clients are data too, is often disconnected. You know, the data appears on Bullhorn, but nothing really happens with it unless it's literally a bullseye on that day at that time, which I think I really do struggle with a candidate these days who have expectations that you're going to do what your website says you're going to do. But often the processes inside a recruitment businesses don't follow up on that expectation. They literally follow up if I'm available that day to go for that job, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I don't think it's harsh at all. The kind of concept of wanting to do it. I mean, you were talking about the amount of time that people spend on this stuff. If you're spending 13, maybe more hours a week on, that's unpaid time largely. And I was listening to the guys at North Star People, Miles and Paul, talk about the amount of unpaid time that recruiters have. So they've gauged it about 70% of the time that a recruiter does their job, they don't get paid for. And they were like, I can't think, and I've tried to do this, I can't think of an industry where you don't, that's as high as that 70% of your time. And I think if you look at, they have solutions themselves, we all have solutions, but the fact is that that's a lot of time. So I think you've got to be harsher, and you've got to, and I think ultimately this is what data does, right? The work that you guys do to focus on the return on investment is bringing that gap from 70% down to the 50%, 40%, 30%. We all expect that not all of our time will be paid for. There's very few professions where 100% of your time is paid for. You're probably legal or something like that, where it's all billable. Maybe you kind of get into there. But recruiters who do RPO and retained. Okay.
I've always been a lone voice, not understanding why recruiters don't have timesheets, right?
Yeah.
And you know, logging the stuff that you do on a daily basis, and then looking at the cost of placement. The cost of placement shouldn't be salary plus job boards and all the tech. It should be breaking it down to how much time was spent on each part of that life cycle, because we've got tech now that should really be able to help us run 100 meters quicker, throw a javelin faster. And I'm obviously thinking about a life cycle of recruitment and trying to make it Olympiad. In you know, it's like a decathlon kind of thing. But the thing is, we don't as an industry scrutinize enough the different parts of the process. We have, as the years have gone on, added more data, added more tech, but we've very rarely as an industry stood back from the coalface and gone, where are the efficiencies to actually be made? And again, when we go into businesses that often ask us to assess and audit their workflows and look at their data and understand where the opportunities are being missed, because we love doing that. One of the first things we'll always find out is what other tech do they have? What data do they have? And trying to get credit for, you can switch that off, you can turn that up, you can train people to use that a bit better. But I do think that the process in itself is not, recruiters don't respect their own time, I think is what we're saying here, isn't it? They don't look at their hourly rate and go, am I using this effectively? Often they're getting very lost in the weeds. And as I've already said, LinkedIn go, you keep doing that. You need a recruiter license if you want to get access to even more data. Whereas you and me are going, you've kind of got what you need already. If your market is not AI, which is obviously a relatively new market, if you're in accountancy or in legal or you're in teaching or you're in medical, this is not a new market. There might be new people coming on board every single day, but not that shouldn't necessarily mean you need to spend all day looking for new people. So I do think it's around having more respect and a straighter spine for the processes that recruiters have, and really saying to themselves, is what my website says, bad grammar about to come out, is what my website saying that I do, is that what I'm actually doing? Or is that just a mask for the reality, which is potential chaos in the background of I've got a new job, damn, I need to find some people. You and I are probably going, you've probably got them already. You've probably got them already. You're just not working them. And that's the return on effort piece for me.
100%.
It's finding all that stuff and not getting a return on it.
No, totally agree. When I worked in recruitment, I could never, and this is probably why I wasn't very good at it, but I could never focus on more than 30 candidates at a time. Like I knew that was my max. Like I knew that I could only know so much about 30 people. And I know there's amazing recruiters out there that could probably juggle 100 people, 200, but they can't juggle 50,000 between 9, right? And that's the fact of it. So you've got to be better here now to make your agency better. Like you can do that with 9 people and data analytics and insights.
Yeah.
If we think about one of the things I was thinking about improving I'm not going to use the word candidate experience, but improving those personal relationships.
Yes.
What type of data points for you are the important ones to be able to do that? And how can you use them? Because we capture a lot, obviously we do websites and we don't capture a lot really. We capture some important stuff, right? Well, people put names and phone numbers and emails and they'll have their CV or the resume for our international audience. But that can get used in lots of different ways. But it doesn't necessarily, like, it's important to have someone's phone number because you probably want to speak to them, right? Okay, everyone knows that. What other kind of things might we want to do with data to improve those kind of the candidate experience, the now personal relationships, as I call it? What have you got any views on that about what we could be doing to kind of do more with that?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the terminology with them, what's in it for me. Okay.
Yeah,
it's not just what's in it for recruitment consultants, but evidently what's in it for candidates and clients as well. I'll always go back to what's important to them as humans. What do they get off on? What do they respect? What do they like? And I always go back to, and you and I used to talk about going running a lot, didn't we? But there was a few years ago, I was going running with my neighbor, and we'll call him John, anonymity. And he was, ironically, this is a good story. He was an IT in financial services contractor. So decent day rate. Money signs, bing, decent day rate. And I go running with him quite a lot. And he knows what I do for a living. And he knows that I work with recruiters. And he has not got a good opinion of recruiters because, and he used this language, they don't even know when my birthday is. They don't care. I never hear from them unless I call them about the fact that my contract is coming up for renewal. He said, or they've changed account manager. I've got a new handler or whatever the language is. I might find out that the person that was dealing with me has left because I put a call in and they're no longer with the business. And I always remember that run. It was a very rainy day. And I remember having to try and justify. And I realized halfway through, I was running out of breath trying to give him excuses as to why he was feeling like this. So, of course, what did Toby do? John, James, he added up over the 10 years he'd been with said IT recruiter, potentially how much he'd earned, how much probably their take home was. And he was getting quite angry and quite annoyed. And then he ended up just moved to a completely different recruiter, basically because they didn't look after the basics, the brilliant basics, the things that that candidates care about. Now, so birthdays, that's a tricky one. Although, are we asking for their date of birth or are we just asking them for the day that they celebrate? When I onboard a new client, that's the first question I ask them every single time because it's an important day for them. And it goes into my database and I have a little system where I can send them a picture of a dog singing happy birthday because I get off on that and I know that that's something that helps keep them warm as well and it's important to them and often as well if they're at work they're probably not getting much thanks on that day, so at least I'm going to be there in the mix. So that's something to think about. But the other things as well is, a lot of people put that on their LinkedIn profiles as well. If once you're connected, you can sometimes see their day, the day that they celebrate their birthday without knowing what age they are. Basic stuff to begin with, but then it's also starting to use maybe automation tools or surveying tools, asking them questions about why they get out of bed in the morning. I'm a big fan of persona mapping, and not to the extent where you spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on a branding agency to find out whether or not they've actually had a cat at some stage in their lives. But what do they get off on at work? What are their aspirations and goals? What kind of content might they want to really see that's going to improve their day? Really understanding how a typical accountant or a lawyer thinks and feels by asking them during your calls. God forbid we actually ask questions like that. What did you want to be when you were growing up? What kinds of things do you get out of bed for? What do you think are the top 3 threats to your market in the next 12 months? Asking them questions probably using your fantastic software to gather that information so you can start feeding back to them stuff that's going to improve your relationship with them. Because they're not going to see you as, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to hire brain surgeons, but you do need to understand why they put scrubs on and get into that operating theatre. You do need to understand how stressful that job is, and what might turn their eye if you sent them something. You need to understand that as a recruiter, and there's no better way of finding out than asking them. And do you need to do that during your calls? I think it's a good idea. I think screening absolutely is a fantastic opportunity to rinse through those questions. I think if you're speaking to clients on a regular basis, whether they're paying for your services or not, a really good way of waking up a dormant relationship is to say, John, let's have a chat. I've got nothing to sell you today, but I know you can help me with something. Can we have a chat quickly about the 5 things that you never saw coming since COVID that have affected your job and how you do it, and things like that? I do think it's got to start. The short answer is, what data should we be collecting? The stuff that they care about, that you can then use to improve and monetize your relationships. That's a short answer.
Totally agree. I think when you change the terminology from candidate experience to personal relationships, we know each other. We have a personal relationship in some way.
Yeah.
And that personal relationship, I know, is that we are both massive Star Wars fans, right?
Yes.
I was watching Star Wars episode 8 last night, right?
I'm glad you didn't say 1, 2, 3, because I might have just hung up on you at that stage, but anyway.
They didn't make them. As I was watching it last night, and I just watch it to find little bits, and because it's really good, right? The people in conversations, we capture this kind of information, because if you build a personal relationship with somebody, it's certainly normal to say, "Oh, hi, what did you do at the weekend?" That is a normal thing to say to somebody, right? And they might say, "Yeah, I went out and I went fishing at the weekend," and you go, "All right, that sounds interesting." Fishers is a fisherman, right? Now we use lots of note-taking software here, so we use it for. It's automatically tracking calls when we go on them with people. Fireflies, we use software to do that. It's an AI tool, and it maps all the conversations, and it goes straight back into our CRM. And there's no reason, we just moved CRM, but there's no reason that can't then filter into searchable fields, so that your marketing team, or as a recruiter, you could put, can you give me a list of all the people that are into fishing? Because we've got tickets to the International Fly Fishing Festival that's happening next week. Nothing to say you can't do that. Or a little, I know you're into fishing. Have you seen this that's happened? Now, if I get that from a company, I'm like, that's cool. Like, that's totally different, right? That is very different. It's one example, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these examples.
Yeah.
And thousands of data points. Times 9, times 50 people in our business.
Yeah.
And I don't think we capitalize on them. No. But if you think of it in the interest of building an ongoing personal relationship, and those personal relationships build better longevity, loyalty from our existing install base of contractors, which do make an awful lot of money for people. Having done that myself personally, it makes a lot of money for people. I think we've got it's not even just a quick win. It's how we build brand, to your point about what people say when we're not in the room. It's that contractor goes to an event. There's a lot of other contractors, and they go, "Oh yeah, I'm with so-and-so's agency. They're brilliant." What I'd say about them is their communication's brilliant, and they really care. Like, they know a lot about me, and they've taken the time to kind of do that. Like, if you're with somebody who doesn't care about you, should move to the agency that I use.
Yeah.
That's data, right? And that's ROI from data in like a real term. That's how I see that. That happening.
I think the problem is even because you and I both work with Bullhorn clients, so evidently on our CRM system that there's got to be a field about which CRM these people use. Yeah,
correct.
And again, I look at the average recruitment consultant who might be working in legal or working in accountancy as an example, and there will be technology that supports said industries. And there'll be some key players, 5 or 6, maybe 1 or 2. And again, having those fields and figuring out where their clients and candidates might be sat in those technology areas. And it's not to say that recruitment consultant needs to become absolutely amazing at Xero or QuickBooks, but they do need to know where the best blogs on those topics are, so they can start gathering them and using that content as part of their preventing dormancy within their database and improving those relationships. Because if someone within And again, God forbid, I mean, I used to do a lot of work, as you know, in marketing and content creation. And I think, you know, if that then means that I understand that maybe the top three, I'm going to stick with accountancy because it's something I know a little tiny bit about, but, you know, the 2 or 3 softwares that are prevalent, what's stopping me from maybe doing a quick survey of 2 or 3 of my top candidates and finding out what their 2 or 3 top tips that they wish they'd known when they started using the software, compiling those into an infographic or a blog and firing that back out on my database. You know, as much as that might not make me a placement today at 4 o'clock, oh, flicking heck, it's going to probably help me make a placement in 9 months' time or 2 months' time, or it might prevent a candidate from dropping out or accepting a counter offer. Or, you know, we're talking about touch points, aren't we? We're not just talking about content from a spammy marketing perspective. We're talking about content that can be used and reused to protect the entire life cycle of a candidate, right from screening right through to hopefully referral stage, because that candidate knows that I'm good at what I do and I've got skin in the game and I get it and I understand their challenges and what makes them laugh. I'll understand the humor of a typical, you know, what makes you laugh, Mr. Accountant? What's the top joke in accountancy in 2024? There will be blogs devoted specifically to that. But if I can plug that content in to the different points at which I'm trying to build and keep those relationships, going back to improving relationships, that's where data can become incredibly helpful. And God forbid, probably make recruitment quite fun and quite engaging for both sides. And it's not just got a job, got a candidate.
Yeah. I think if you're this is gold, right? And I think if you're it doesn't really matter on the size. I was gonna give a headcount size, but I'm past the world of headcounts a bit. But if you're running a business that's a niche, say especially in IT, right? IT is prime for it, and there's obviously a lot of kind of STEM type recruiters out there.
Yeah.
The amount of data that people put on CVs when they come in the IT sector is insane, right? Because if somebody will put like, I am a front-end developer, right? That's the job. But actually what they're saying is that I use React and Next.js or whatever it is, right? So we should be pulling React and Next.js out of that CV automatically.
Yes.
We should be populating a field of skills or like use this for marketing field, right? And then what we should be looking at is, right, next time there's an update to React or Next.js or there's like some major release, why aren't our marketing team creating content that's aimed at those people? Email it to all of the people that's in our database. Hey, just thought you'd be interested to see this that's going on in the space. And then have that as marketing collateral for all of my team, my sales team, to go and put on LinkedIn, give them collateral to back it up, to go and attract the next group of people that are coming through. That's a real example of where we're using data that we're collecting to build better personal relationships, but then to drag people in and say, hey, we know all about your industry. We care about not here's the latest in being a front-end developer. It doesn't really exist that as a concept, but it's all skills-based. I think that's the shift.
But it's when that content is created, and certainly what I found in my younger days when I used to do a lot of marketing mentoring is I would come across marketeers who were overworked in content creation and underutilized in content marketing, right? Yeah. So they spend a lot of time bleeding over their keyboards, trying to, like a master's thesis, which when the content already exists. Yeah. And I still remember years ago, the stat was quite horrific. It's like 80% of the content online is never even seen. But meanwhile, recruitment marketeers are bleeding over their keyboards trying to create more. A bit like recruiters, 80% of the candidates that they place, they've already got, but they decided it's a much better use of their time rather than nurturing them, is to go and find them again and act like they're brand new. It's like, well, that's not a great personal relationship to build. That's admitting that you've not got control of your market. I do think there's enough content out there already that the average recruitment marketeer needn't create anything apart from signposts. You know, the top 3 blogs that we spotted this week are, and of course, if recruiters are, when they're doing their screening calls, finding out where the average candidate and client is likely to be residing online, what do they wake up, what do they receive, what do they subscribe to? They don't need to do years worth of data analysis to spot a trend. Yeah, you might ask you might have 10 recruiters in your business, and each one asks 10 candidates over the next week, and at the end of the week, you'll have enough big data, not that big, but big enough data to actually understand where you might need to be subscribing to, so you can start pulling stuff down, and then you're on stage with these people. You're already aligning yourself with that content. But again, I'll pick on something you've just said around absolutely marketeers should be using this content. And if you don't have a marketeer, just a one-person business, again, you still are a marketeer. You should be using this content to attract people in the future. But I don't think enough is done with content to actually glue down the existing pipeline from screening, then through to interview confirmation and debriefing and feedback and interview prep. Interview prep there's not enough done at that stage to protect. There's not enough done to control the recruitment life cycle from screening right through to redeployment and referral. There's often way too much hope. Yeah, and we know hope is not a strategy. And if only that had been said somewhere in Star Wars, I'd be a very happy girl. But I don't think there's enough work and strategy done on the actual recruitment life cycle. It's very disjointed. Often when we work in recruitment businesses, there's a lot of time spent looking for stuff and not enough time spent protecting it. And as a result of that, there's a lot of risk built in. And a lot of, I still speak to recruiters, and when they get a counter offer, it's just a fact of life, isn't it? Not a fact of my life. Not a fact of my life. If I was in recruitment, I am. I would be laying the ground to do everything I possibly can. So when that counteroffer happens, I go, we both knew that was going to happen. Didn't I tell you that was going to happen? Here's the stats to prove to you that this isn't going to help you whatsoever. Keep looking at me. Focus on me. We're getting through this together. And we're going to come out the other end. Or the candidate rings Matt up and goes, Matt, you told me that counteroffer was coming with the content that you might have sent to me and things like that. Don't worry about it. I've rejected it because I know where I'm going is going to be better for me. And all of these data points and these relationships that you've been using data to build have ultimately protected not just the pipeline of the future, but the one that's happening today, which for me is that's the ultimate return on effort, isn't it? It's asking a recruitment consultant to think into the future and protect tomorrow's pipeline. I think is a big ask. The last 5 years, we've been blindsided by so many different world events. It's a difficult ask to ask a recruiter to be strategic every single day. So we start with the tactics, and we say, how can we build stronger relationships with data? Well, who are you speaking to today? What can you find out about them? And how can you use that to protect the job that they're going for right now? Something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's not, well, who else are you interviewing with at the moment? That's not it, is it? I mean, that's complete, like, I know there'll be a lot of recruiters who got to make a lot of money still doing that probably, but it's the depth. This is the depth. This is the inch wide, mile deep, isn't it? On every single interaction that you have. And then it's the coaching and how we use data to provide better coaching to people. Let's talk about your counteroffer. What counteroffer do you think your company's going to give you? I love that as a question. How much do you think they're going to offer you? Right. What would you need? And then when it comes in under, you're like, so they're actually, remember we spoke and you said you thought you were going to get 50 and they've offered 46. How does that make you feel right now? Well, it's not as much as I wanted, right? Okay, but the job I've got you is 50, and actually it'll be 60, and then it looks like this, and actually there's more, and it's that. How do we use all the data points that we've got and collected throughout the journey to better, and then, back to the point around content, how do we present and position content better by using that data? Because the data is just one side of it, right? It's what we then use to back up that data and do something with it. That is actually where the ROI actually occurs from. I was thinking about negatives. In terms of trying to do this, though, what are the challenges? Because you guys do this all the time, right? You see it all the time. What are the types of challenges that you see from? Because this is like data-driven best practice is kind of what we're saying, or becoming a better data-driven recruitment organization. What type of challenges do you guys see in that? And like, what are the struggles that maybe agencies have when they're doing this type of thing?
Yeah, I think often agencies see this as data health as a very linear project. So I always have a giggle to myself about in the good old days, some of my clients would have pizza and Peroni nights, right? So everyone's working late. Here's a case of beer. Get drunk and code up your data. Listen to what I just said, Matt. Get drunk and code up your data.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I go, oh, if only I had a DeLorean and could go back in time and go, let's get that beer out the room, because you're basically about to operate important machinery under the influence. So that's just something to think about. Often we see data health as something we ship out to another company or another continent, or maybe sometimes the actual Bullhorn system has not been built to receive gorgeous, clean data. That's something else to think about. So what you're doing is you're piling data. There's a particular client that I'm not going to name names at the moment. They're in a right pickle because they made the wrong decision a few years ago about how to code up their data, and they went down that yellow brick road, and it turned out to go to the wrong witch's house kind of thing. And they are now looking at tens of thousands of pounds worth of time to unpick that, so they can free themselves up and actually operate in a nice even playing field. So it's looking at your Bullhorn database. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And what I mean by that is just because you can create codes in a particular way, and just because Bullhorn, there's a button that allows you to do it, doesn't mean you should, and doesn't mean it's going to help you in the long run. We go into lots of businesses and do our Bullhorn vision projects where we assess what they've done with their Bullhorn system and how they've coded up their data. 9 times out of 10, they've overcomplicated it. And they've made it almost impossible for recruiters to really understand what return on effort they're going to get if they actually conform to coding up their data. So that's the first problem. Is Bullhorn actually able to allow you to be clean, or have you made it very difficult for yourselves to do that? The second thing as well is that this manual process of data health will always hold you back. Well, thank God there's automation now to make light work of that. And we are doing work every single day to take away the pain of data health and make it as automated as possible. The third thing I always think about as well when it comes to data health is it's not I've done it now. I'm clean. It's about, I always say, if you imagine 2 trains, right? 2 trains, you've got your old data train and you've got your new data train. And the old data train's already full of candidates, really dirty, nasty looking candidates. The new train is empty and it's got new candidates joining every day. And ideally what you want is that new train, as the candidates join, just to remain clean. All this gorgeous stuff you and I are talking about, best practice, building relationships, gathering data, keeping those people warm. Start off as you mean to go on. They'll not know any different. Meanwhile, you're working on your old data set as well. And eventually, watch this beautiful lining up of the 2 train carriages. Eventually, they'll couple up together. All of the data will be sorted and they'll reach their destination, which is lots of money. Thank you very much. But the problem is often we are fixated on cleaning up old data that we're not actually thinking about the new stuff that hits the system. And that for me is a real problem. So that's again where people really should be looking at automation tools to make light work of that really dirty train and get it sorted out, but also to make sure that any automation tools that you engage with are actively managing and nurturing those candidates beyond simple applications right through. And then eventually best practice just clicks in really nicely and takes the pain away. So you don't have to have pizza and Peroni evenings. You don't need to engage with LinkedIn Recruiter or job boards to find data that you've already got. You massively save a huge amount of time and money on external systems, when ultimately the Bullhorn system is where all of your data is at. And then you can use your website and your content to really nurture those relationships out. So I think often data health is made too complicated by looking for either perfection or not really focusing on where the money could be made. So that's something to think about.
I totally agree. And I wrote a couple of things down there. One of them is I see that people, they have this, they'll see an empty field in the CRM or recruiter and they won't fill it in. Yeah. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
No, it's not my field. It's not my problem. I actually think that your Bullhorn CRM or whichever CRM you use, it's everybody's problem, because your candidate tomorrow is somebody else's candidate today in your own business. Yeah. A recruiter has put a job out and they find a candidate, right? You've got the perfect job for that candidate, quite potentially in your right either today, or you don't know, but it's going to come down the line. If that's not mapped up properly and the data's not filled in, or the client's data isn't filled in correctly, it becomes your problem because you've just missed that candidate, even though they're in your own database. Totally. The CRM's data health is everybody in the business's problem, and everyone wins and loses together when it comes to data. For me, like if I see a field in our CRM and even if it's like country and it's blank, I just add it in. Where are they based? Yeah. It might take me 20 seconds, but it means that when we run a thing, show me all UK based, blah, blah, if they come up like that account, so then our marketing team can market to it. So I always think that it's everyone's problem. And the other issue that I see, which is probably similar to that, is I think people have a very short term, to your point about the nice clean train, I think people have a very short term view of data. Yeah. I always think, what do I want my business to look like in 4 years? How do I want people to be using this in 4 or 5 years? Because it might be really horrible today to get it set up like that, but in 6 months, is it going to be better? Yeah. In 12 months, it's going to be incredible. And in 4 years, it will be the norm for us to be there. And I think some people just think, oh, I buy this, it's back to your thing, I set it up, I am saved, and then I don't need to do anything with it. And they forget that actually the business is going to change potentially in the next 3 to 4 years. What does it look like when we have 40 people using it rather than 4 people using it? Because we all want to scale our businesses. What does it look like with 10 rather than 4? So I see that. Look, you guys were instrumental, I always think. I'm now in the grammar issues in really helping so many Bullhorn automation, what was Herefish Bullhorn automation customers, and I think you guys still do. But I think you're instrumental in really getting the usage of that to where it has gotten to. Obviously, it's Bullhorn product, like that's brilliant, but you do need people to get the most out of it. And I think you guys, more than anybody, as much as anyone, before anyone shouts at me, but I definitely as much as anyone, we're right up there in getting the usage and really taking recruiters on this automation journey. I want to talk about that for a second. The human touch is one thing that it concerns me, but probably shouldn't as much. But how are you guys helping people balance that? Because there's a lot of qualitative aspects of recruitment, aren't there? And there's like quant and qual of what they do, and we want to balance that, like that side of it, without losing a human touch, right? We want to say, right, here's all the automation. What do you got? Like, talk to me about that. I haven't really got a question there, other than like that's a statement that, like, what are you guys seeing and doing in that? And like, I'm interested to hear your views on that. And I've got a question about AI, and I think we'll be done.
It can come for me. I need a rest. Automation is definitely one of those. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay, it is definitely one of those things that's a strategy, and it can be a tactic to a wider premise. But again, I always go back to the what's in it for me. If I was to automate anything out of my day, I'm a recruitment consultant. If I could get rid of anything that allows me to have better phone calls. In fact, let me answer this slightly differently. I was on a webinar a few weeks back with a new client of mine. We've just got them all enrolled onto my lovely little training platform, Recruitment Hit, and it's going to help them weaponize the bullhorn, learn more about recruitment. And this guy said to me, and he asked me a question, Lisa, how much luck is there in recruitment? And this has really sat with me ever since, because I just love questions like this. This could be a webinar in the future, Matt. And I sat and thought about it, and I thought, God, I've been in the market a couple of decades now, and I've seen it not change enough, but still change a lot. And I think in the good old days, there was a lot of luck. You pick the phone up and you'd hit it hard until you got somewhere. There was very little science, apart from we had smaller data sets to manage, and we probably used our memories a lot more because our CRMs didn't really do what we wanted them to do, and we might have had everything written down, literally. And then you flash forward to now, massive data sets, crazy world events knocking us off our stride every 5 flipping minutes. There's a bit of luck, but I think there's a lot more science. So automation has a lot to help us become less, not about luck, and more about being in the right place, being at the right time, return on effort, really helping us focus on what needs to be done. I always describe automation as the best cuddle in the world, right? When you have a really good cuddle, Matt, it just, you just feel the love. It squeezes out all the badness. It's hard not to feel really good about things. With automation, it should squeeze all the badness out. It should squeeze out all the crap data. It should squeeze out all the time zapping admin. It should squeeze out all of the time wasters and wasting. It should squeeze out all of the leads that are a total waste of your time. And it should squeeze in all of the good stuff. Great call lists, the right people to ring at the right time about the right stuff. It should absolutely squeeze in time to build those strong relationships, to monetize those relationships. It should squeeze in really good processes. I think, though, where we are in the market with automation, though, is, like we were talking about earlier, there might not be enough scrutiny about the different parts of the recruitment lifecycle to really know where automation is going to add the most benefit. Another reason why my team runs lots of free webinars around this about ROI and automation, because I'm a big fan of pointing the automation laser at sourcing, pointing it at counter offers, pointing it at BD, pointing it at data health, and really neutralizing the issues that recruiters struggle with: too much time sourcing, working the wrong clients, losing deals because candidates drop out because they're not being managed effectively enough. So I think with automation, it's what's in it for me. My name's John Smith. I run a recruitment business. How is automation going to help my business become more sustainable? How's it going to help me train my recruiters to become more effective in their day jobs? How is it going to make sure that candidates and clients stick with me and don't get distracted by my competition? That's what automation is for me. And it's giving businesses the opportunity to really run their businesses and, very importantly, their desks the way they would really want to if they weren't bogged down in stuff that means they have to rely on luck to be effective in their jobs. That's what automation is for me. It creates common sense. Hope that answers your question.
I love it. Was it Bill Shankly maybe said, like, the harder I work, the luckier I get, or something like that? I probably wasn't, but I think that's what automation does. It works harder for you to reduce the amount of luck that's required, right? I love that analogy. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think that's a huge takeaway actually from this, that like the more that is working for you, it drops those the divergence in outcomes, isn't it? It reduces that and gives you better outcomes by using it. And for everyone I've spoken to, my personal opinion of this is that the automation and AI should be used to improve the human relationship, because there's a bit more of it that we can have, right? We can have more of a human relationship because we've taken away all of that other stuff that we were doing, that background stuff, those 13 hours back to the start. If we can get those 13 hours back, what would you do with them? I'd speak to people more. That's what I do.
Even if you could split, even if you could halve the amount of time that people spend on sourcing and then take that time and reinvest it in phoning the right people at the right time. I mean, for me, it's like, again, I've seen the market drowning in data, suffocated by technology. There's so much going on, but not enough process. Yeah. And then I get recruitment leaders coming to me going, my staff aren't using Bullhorn. And then I'll say, tell me what else you've got going on in your business. And they rattle all this stuff. I goes, it's the equivalent of you've bought so many toys, they don't know where to start. Or going back to your comment around, I see a blank field. It's not my problem. And I get recruiters regularly coming to me saying, can you train my staff to use Bullhorn? Or rather, can you train my Bullhorn champions to use Bullhorn? And I'll go, surely everybody should be a champion of Bullhorn, or everyone should be a champion of the CRM system that you've got. Don't just nominate a couple of people that need to be really good. For me, I can't ever think about being behind the wheel of a car and just being a bit okay at driving, but let's hope that 10% of the people out there are really good at driving. For me, you are the pastor. Do you know what I mean? But you're behind the wheel of your CRM all day long, being okay at it. It's a bit like saying, oh, it's okay, we'll make people phone champions. I always look at this.
Yeah.
That's like a bit of tech that you're using to make money. So why is it that in CRM world, we pick a small, on average in the recruitment industry, there's this champion terminology. I'm like, everyone needs to be really good at this, because otherwise they're going to waste a crazy amount of time not doing it very well. And nobody buys a CRM system to be a bit crap with it, do they? They want to make money from it.
Yeah, it's a huge investment, isn't it? And like, people invest so much money and then they kind of like half it and nothing, and then we could talk all day about it, but where the integrations fail because that's not working, then the actual usage of it doesn't work, and you think, why did you buy it? You actually probably would have been better spending your money in a very different way, probably, right? You could have spent your money in a very different way and probably got a much return. I've got an AI question, right? I think it might take a while, but let's see how we get on with the quick answers for it. But obviously, we've talked a lot about gathering data, collecting data today, and what it means for our businesses today. But in terms of proactive decision making, that's where I think AI is going to actually have a really good time in our businesses. I think just making us better predictive analytics, people would call it. Yeah. Like, are you guys doing much with that now? Are you kind of preparing for it? Is that one of the things that you're speaking to companies about?
Yeah, I think for me, where my head's at with AI is, and the recruitment market is not known for being at the front of stuff, right? And I do get that, and it frustrates me a little bit. But equally, I don't want any of them to get burned by going down the wrong road and then going, "Oh God, if only I'd have known."
Never be the first.
Watch everybody else mess it up first, absolutely. But also be prepared to get on that train really quick once you see the right person on it. I think for me, automation is about getting people AI ready. Automation is about getting processes streamlined as much as possible so AI can slot in and take over where needed. And again, it's that being strategic thinkers. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay. And it also might mean, sorry about this, but just because you should might not mean you can. And I think that for me is where recruitment leaders need to sit back in their businesses, look at their recruitment life cycle and look at it and go, where is the waste? Where is the time being, the lack of return on effort and investment? And then as the AI tools start to really take hold, I mean, they're not really where they need to be yet. And I think we all appreciate that and understand that. I mean, automation's been out for a couple of decades, but it's only in the last 2-3 years that recruiters have actually started understanding what's in it for them. I think while the industry is struggling with wanting to remain as human as possible and being probably a little bit Luddite in that approach, look it up, those of you. I'm an old woman, so I understand what that means. But it's looking at that and going, where will AI help me build stronger relationships? That's the answer to the question. Where will it help me build stronger relationships so I can protect my business and this does not turn into episode 5 of Skynet kind of thing? That's where AI needs to be. And automation is the precursor to that. That's kind of 100% what we need to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think if the key takeaway, there's a lot of takeaways here, but one of the big takeaways from data and kind of getting better at this as a business is the better data that you collect, the cleaner that data, the better the placement data, everything about those businesses, it will tell you, AI will tell you which roles that you should work based around percentage outcomes of close, right? Because I see this all the time. Recruiters, funny enough, are driven by money, and that is a good thing, right, for them. But you can get shadowed by this. It happened to me in my recruitment career, where you say there's a £30,000 placement fee over here, right?
Yeah.
And there's a £6,000 placement fee over here. I'm like, which one would you rather make? £30,000. But if I said to you, well, we've run it through our AI modeler, and it reckons you've got a 6% chance of closing the deal at £30,000. But based around all of the previous history that you've got and the type of people that you place and the database that you've got, you have a 91% chance of closing the £6,000 deal. Which would you rather work? Now, there will still be those recruiters that's like, but that's 30 grand. That
absolutely.
Fee. And I think they will have a really bad time. Because I think the clever ones will say, well, let's reduce the amount of risk. Let's use the AI to model that, and we're going to go for this. And that, I think, is where I see predictive analysis having the biggest impact in the short term with recruiters. But it won't happen if your data isn't spot on. You've got to be a data-centric, bullhorn first, in your words, business for all of this to kind of wrap around and happen. Otherwise, it just won't happen. Lisa, I could talk to you all day, you know that. And there's probably a Star Wars podcast that we should be running together outside of all of this.
There has to be.
I'm sure and I'd definitely be up for that. But it's been an absolute pleasure. If people want to get in touch with you, Barclay Jones, what's the best ways of doing that? LinkedIn.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn like a lunatic, so you'll see me regularly with a lovely yellow background, but barclayjones.com is the first place to start. Absolutely. And I'd love to see loads of people on our webinars. We run them twice monthly, all around analytics, automation, bullhorn first tips, all about the themes that we've been talking about today, which is what's in it for me, what's the ROI, what's the return on investment. So lots of tips and tricks. Love to see them on that.
Brilliant. I'm sure we will speak again and you come back for another expert insight. This isn't one of these one and out podcasts or webinars or vlogs. I don't know what this is or whatever people call it. But I'm sure we'll have you back. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone else, thank you for watching. And until next time, hopefully you can put some of the stuff that we spoke about today into action in your business and start to see some of that return on effort that we talked about.
Absolutely. Take care.